Supersized portions are leading to growing calls for governments to set standards for food companies to reduce these sizes. But how do food marketers slim down their offerings and not lose customers? There is a solution. It's in new research by Pierre Chandon, INSEAD Professor of Marketing, who joins us now on INSEAD Knowledge. Pierre, what's the current situation with portion sizes in the food industry?
It's very simple. It's out of control. Okay. If you think back at a very simple product, Coca-Cola. For the first 60 years of its existence, Coca-Cola had basically one size, 6.5 ounces or 19 centiliter. I have here vintage Coca-Cola bottle from 1907, and you recognize the distinctive shape, and the size is 6.5 ounces. Here's one that this is when I used to order a Coke. This is what I used to have, and I don't consider myself that old, but still, even in the mid-90s, that's what you had, 19 centiliters just for a drink. Now today, a regular Coke is 50 centiliters. Okay, or 24 ounces, and that's why there's all been this debate about banning 16 ounces drinks would be really infringing on people's right, because this is becoming the norm. Now, we're coming from 19 centiliters to 50, or 6.5 ounces to 24. That's a huge increase, but that's nothing. Because if you go to some convenience stores, and this is what you get, okay? This today has become, of course, a big portion, but still, accepted portion for soda. And this has happened to all beverages, basically. I also have here some cocktail glass from the 50s. And I'm just going to put next to it what is today a regular size cocktail glass. Okay. And so you don't need rocket science or even any big fancy statistics to realize that because portions have increased so much, so has our consumption of beverages.
Well, what's been the response to this disturbing increase in portion sizes on the part of food watchdogs and policymakers?
Only until recently, when the Bloomberg administration in New York City decided to ban the sale of 16-ounce and more cups in fast food restaurants. No one had really thought about doing anything about size. I mean, sizes are free. You're free to sell how much you want. You're free to call them the way you want. You go to Starbucks, the smallest size is called a tall, okay? So until now, there hasn't been so much thought. And the problem is there is a big incentive from restaurants, in particular, to sell bigger sizes. If you're a restaurant, most of your costs are fixed. It's labor, it's real estate, and the cost of adding a few centiliters of soda is really not that much. So when you have people inside your store, it always pays to try to upsize them because you will be able to charge more. Consumers are happy because it's cheaper by the volume.
Why are people so bad at measuring the portions of what they consume themselves?
So one simple answer, it's because we don't know, okay? As consumers, when you go into a supermarket, it says visibly how much volume there is. And so if you buy a can of Coke, it says 12 ounces or 33 centiliters. But if you go to some of these, especially convenience stores, you can have a cup like this. And this is a cup that comes from a movie chain. And nowhere does it say how big it is, okay? You really have to guess. And the problem is that it's very hard to estimate increases in volume. The brain is very bad at geometry. This one here is actually 36 ounces. Okay, it's 3 times as big. Well, for most people, it doesn't look 3 times as big. Okay, the way the brain estimates changes in volume is not accurate. We underestimate the increase by a really wide margin. Let me show you how actually it works. I have here a very simple example with 2 candles. Okay, so one is clearly bigger than the others. And so if I'm telling you the size of the small one, how will you figure out the size of the big one? So one thing that we are pretty good at is to realize how much the height, width, and length have increased. Where we're really bad is how to combine these changes to estimate the change in volume. Geometrically, you only need to increase the height, width, and length of any object by 26% to double it, because 1.26 to the cube is 2. Well, 26% is very little, right? And the fact is, this big candle doesn't look twice as big as the small one. It looks roughly 50 to 70% bigger. Why is that? Because the way our brain solves this difficult problem is by adding the increase in height, width, and length. So 26 plus 26 plus 26 instead of multiplying it. And as a result, we underestimate.
Well, how can we do a better job of helping consumers better measure the portions of what they're eating?
So the simplest answer is obviously to make it loud and clear how big the cups are. And in some countries, like in France, for example, if you go to a fast food chain restaurant, it will tell you 50 centiliters, 40 centiliters. So that's the basic. But beyond that, unfortunately, education doesn't really help remove the bias. It's a visual illusion. You know, it's very hard to train people. Even I make the mistake all the time. It's very hard to help people estimate directly the sizes. So I think the approach that we've been studying at INSEAD is to use those biases to nudge people to choose smaller sizes. And so one simple example again with the candles. So if we take the big candle like that, and we cut the height, then it becomes a simpler problem. There's just one dimension. And in this case, people were very accurate. They really realized how small the smaller was. Now, this is not so good because it means that, again, people don't like downsizing. So very few people would choose the smaller size. But if instead of that, you actually elongate the candle, then it becomes much more difficult to estimate. And what we actually found is because of the way the brain works, people don't realize that the elongated candle that I have in my hand here is actually 24% lighter than the original one. And even when people were weighing the candle by hands, they thought maybe we shaved 5%, 7%, 8%, but they didn't realize we had reduced the weight by 24%. So one approach, and in fact it's being used by marketers now, is to elongate objects. That's why, for example, you have the slim can, okay, kind of the Red Bull or these new cans. They look bigger than they really are. And that's why a lot of the small sizes that we see, think about the Danone, Danactive or Actimel, they're really, really tiny and they're really elongated. They always fall on the table because they figured out that this is one way to help people choose smaller sizes.
I know in your research you were also looking at this joint perception that consumers have of desire and unhealthiness. And that actually this is something that can work in the favor of food marketers as a way forward to deal with this problem of portion sizes. Could you explain a little bit your research and how this could be a way forward?
Right. So one way to help people make better choices is to change the shape. The other way to think about the way people see the food. With food, there's always two conflicting goals. You know, on the one hand, you want to indulge and enjoy the taste. On the other hand, you're kind of concerned that it's not so healthy and you will gain weight. What we actually found is that if you play up this conflict, if you remind people about these ambivalence that we all have, people become better at estimating portion sizes.
Well, Pierre Chandon, thank you very much for talking to us today on INSEAD Knowledge.
Thank you, Sarah.